The stars were never kind to humanity. When the United Galactic Federation discovered Earth, they deemed humanity unfit for integration. Too aggressive, too unpredictable, too emotional. They placed sanctions, forbidding trade, colonization, or technological aid. The verdict was clear. Humanity was to remain stranded on its dying homeworld, a species doomed to rot in the shadow of greater civilizations. But the Federation underestimated one thing: humanity's refusal to die quietly. Earth was suffocating. Resources dwindled, wars over scraps intensified, and the Federation stood back, watching like indifferent gods. They had the power to help, but they had already decided. Humanity was not worth saving. But in the darkest corners of the world, in underground bunkers and hidden laboratories, a different future was being written. Brilliant minds, scientists, engineers, hackers, and warlords came together, driven by one purpose: survival. They scavenged technology from black market dealers, reverse-engineered alien systems, and pushed their own sciences beyond limits. The Federation believed Earth was locked in isolation. They were wrong. In the silence of space, forgotten stations and derelict ships became humanity's first strongholds. Smugglers, mercenaries, and outcasts joined their ranks, bound not by nationality but by purpose. They became the Ghost Fleet, a hidden armada that operated in the darkness between the stars. Their weapons were outdated compared to Federation standards. Their ships were cobbled together from stolen scraps. But they were human, and that meant they adapted, they endured, and most importantly, they struck where it hurt the most. For years, the Federation never knew who was raiding their supply lines, disrupting their communications, and stealing classified technology. By the time they realized, it was too late. Humanity was no longer confined to Earth. They had built an empire in the shadows. On the bridge of the Iron Revenant, Admiral Darius Kane stood with his hands behind his back, staring at the vastness of space. His fleet, a ghost armada of human warships, drifted like silent predators in the dark, waiting for the signal to strike. Their target was Vortan 5, a resource world vital to the Federation's economy. If humanity wanted to send a message, this was the place. A soft chime rang through the bridge. "Admiral," said Lieutenant Reyes, her voice calm but firm. "Federation patrols are moving into the sector, just as predicted." Kane allowed himself a small smile. "Good," he said. "Then it's time they learned why rejecting humanity was their greatest mistake." The Iron Revenant hung in the void, its darkened hull absorbing the distant glow of Vortan 5's twin suns. Around it, the Ghost Fleet remained hidden, engines cold, weapons primed, waiting for the moment to strike. Admiral Darius Kane watched the enemy fleet move into position. Federation patrols were predictable, efficient but complacent. They relied on their superior technology and numbers, believing no one could challenge them. They had never fought humans who had nothing left to lose. "Status?" Kane asked. Lieutenant Reyes checked the tactical display. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 frigates, and 2 carrier escorts. Their shields are down. Standard peacetime formation. They don't suspect a thing. A dark chuckle rumbled from Kane's throat. "They will soon." With a nod, he gave the order. A single burst signal pulsed through the void, a silent whisper in the dark. And the shadows came alive. From the darkness, human warships surged forward. Cloaked fighters, their engines running cold until the last second, ignited in blue streaks of fire as they screamed toward the unsuspecting fleet. Silent torpedoes, designed to evade standard sensor detection, struck first, smashing into the Federation cruisers before their shields could power up. Explosions erupted across the enemy formation, and chaos followed. "Unknown hostiles engaging. Shields up!" The Federation officers barely had time to react before the Ghost Fleet tore into them. Kane's fleet didn't fight like the Federation. There were no drawn-out engagements, no prolonged tactical standoffs. Humanity had learned the art of war the hard way, through desperation, through survival. The Iron Revenant fired its rail cannons, sending hyper-dense slugs through the first frigate's hull. The ship crumpled, its reactor going critical in a silent, fiery explosion. Federation ships scrambled to return fire, but the Ghost Fleet was already among them, moving with terrifying precision. Stealth corvettes weaved between capital ships, planting boarding charges. Human commandos, soldiers forged in the hell of Earth's wars, breached enemy vessels, cutting down Federation officers before they could even draw their sidearms. On the bridge of a Federation cruiser, Admiral Thesic of the Federation's 3rd Patrol Fleet watched in horror. This can't be possible," he muttered. A lieutenant turned to him, her face pale. "Sir, we're being overrun. We don't even know who they are." Thesic clenched his fists. He knew. There was only one species with this level of reckless defiance. "Humans," he spat. On the Iron Revenant, Kane watched as the Federation fleet crumbled. Ships burned, enemy crews surrendered, and Vorton 5's orbital defenses fell into silence. Reyes turned to him. "Orders, sir?" Kane took a slow breath. "Send a message," he said. The transmission echoed across the system, hijacking every Federation frequency. "You cast us out. You abandoned us. You thought humanity was finished. You were wrong. We are the Ghost Fleet. We are the darkness between the stars. And we have returned." Far across the galaxy, in the heart of the Federation's capital, the message played before the High Council. For the first time in centuries, fear crept into their eyes. Humanity was no longer beneath their notice. Humanity was at war. The Ghost Fleet had struck its first blow, and the Federation reeled from the shock. Vorton 5, a planet once considered untouchable, now lay in human hands. The station defenses had fallen, its orbital shipyards had been seized, and Federation survivors were either dead or prisoners. But Kane knew this was only the beginning. The Federation was arrogant, but it wasn't weak. It had fleets that spanned the stars, worlds covered in fortress cities, and an army drawn from 1,000 species. Now that humanity had shown its hand, the full weight of the galaxy would come crashing down upon them, which was exactly what Kane wanted. In the command center of the Iron Revenant, Lieutenant Reyes analyzed intercepted Federation transmissions. The enemy was panicking. Reports of the attack spread like wildfire, and the High Council had already ordered a response. "They're mobilizing the 6th Armada," Reyes said. "At least 60 warships, including dreadnoughts." A murmur ran through the command crew. The Federation didn't send dreadnoughts for minor skirmishes. This was an extermination order. Kane smirked. "Perfect." Commander Locke, Kane's chief strategist, stepped forward. "Sir, we can't take on an entire armada head-on. Even with Vorton 5's resources, we're still outgunned." Kane leaned forward, his eyes glinting with something dangerous. "We don't need to win a battle," he said. "We need to win a war." The Ghost Fleet didn't fight conventionally. They were insurgents, saboteurs, ghosts in the void. If the Federation thought this would be a simple fleet engagement, they were walking into a trap. Kane turned to Reyes. "Send out the signal. It's time to activate the sleeper cells." Across Federation space, humanity had not been idle. The Federation believed they had isolated Earth, but humans had been slipping through the cracks for decades, posing as traders, mercenaries, engineers. They had wormed their way into shipyards, intelligence bureaus, and military outposts. They had listened, learned, and waited. And now, the waiting was over. On the industrial world of Belthar 9, a human engineer working on a Federation battleship inserted a simple command into the ship's AI. When the Sixth Armada jumped to warp, its supply lines would accidentally be sent to the wrong coordinates, stranding half its fleet in deep space. On the fortress planet Xiphos Prime, a human scientist in a classified weapons lab triggered a chain reaction in the Federation's prototype plasma cannons. The resulting explosion destroyed 3 dreadnoughts before they could even leave dock. On the Federation's capital world of Elysia, a single encrypted message was sent from a human diplomat's datapad. Within hours, power outages swept through the planetary defense grid, leaving the seat of the Federation temporarily vulnerable. One by one, the dominoes fell. The Federation had an armada. Humanity had strategy. Back on Vortan 5, Kane stood on the bridge of his flagship as the Federation fleet arrived. The Sixth Armada, reduced but still formidable, emerged from warp in perfect battle formation. Their admiral, a towering reptilian named Varric Thul, hailed them. His yellow eyes burned with fury. "Human filth," he growled. "Surrender now, and we may spare some of you for labor camps. Resist, and we will erase your species from history." Kane chuckled, stepping forward. "You talk big for someone who's about to lose everything." Varric Thul sneered. "You are outnumbered. You cannot hope to defeat us." Kane simply smiled. And then, behind Varric Thul's fleet, the stars exploded. Dozens of hidden human ships, lying in wait within Vortan 5's asteroid belt, opened fire. Bombardment missiles and kinetic slugs ripped through the enemy formation. The dreadnought's shields flared under the unexpected onslaught, struggling to compensate. At the same time, within the Federation's own fleet, dozens of human sleeper agents activated. Systems shut down. Weapons locked up. Entire ships turned on their own allies. The Sixth Armada had come to crush humanity. Instead, it was being torn apart from within. Kane watched the chaos unfold and leaned in toward the comms. "I hope you enjoyed your stay in the stars," he said to Varric Thul, "because this is humanity's galaxy now." Across the Federation, fear spread like wildfire. The Ghost Fleet wasn't just a rogue group of pirates. It was an uprising. The rejected species had done the impossible. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. Humanity was winning. The battle above Vortan 5 raged like a storm, but it was no ordinary battle. It was a slaughter. The Sixth Armada had arrived with confidence, believing they were about to exterminate a nuisance. Instead, they found themselves ensnared in the jaws of a predator they never saw coming. Federation ships fired wildly into the chaos, unsure if the enemy was before them or among them. Human infiltrators had disabled key systems, turned automated defenses against their own ships, and sown such discord that even their admirals had no idea who to trust. On the Iron Revenant, Kane watched the destruction unfold with cold satisfaction. "Status?" he asked. Reyes's voice was steady, but there was an edge of triumph beneath it. 30% of their fleet is already lost. Another 15% is either disabled or compromised. Their dreadnoughts are holding, but their command structure is in shambles." Kane nodded. "Good. Make sure no one escapes." The Federation's greatest mistake had been thinking they could contain humanity. That mistake was now costing them their most powerful fleet. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Varric Thul's reptilian claws gripped the edges of his command throne, his yellow eyes wide with rage and disbelief. "Where is my firepower?" he snarled. "Where are my reinforcements?" A terrified officer stammered, "Sir, all reinforcements have been compromised. We are receiving conflicting orders from within our own fleet. Some ships have already surrendered, others are engaging each other." "Then retake control," Varric Thul bellowed. Before his officers could respond, the ship lurched violently. Emergency klaxons blared as explosions rippled through the lower decks. Varric Thul turned his gaze towards the viewport. What he saw made his blood run cold. The Iron Revenant was coming straight for them. The human flagship, wreathed in the fire of the dying Federation fleet, moved with terrifying precision. Railguns ignited, kinetic slugs ripping through Varric Thul's escort ships. Its fighter squadrons swarmed his defenses like a plague, picking apart whatever was left of his fleet. The humans weren't retreating, they were hunting, and Varric Thul was the prey. Kane stood at the helm of his ship, eyes locked onto the enemy flagship. "Bring us in closer," he ordered. Reyes hesitated. "Sir, if we get too close, their main cannons, they won't get the chance to fire." Kane's voice was ice. "I'm ending this now." The Iron Revenant surged forward, dodging through wreckage and fire. Federation ships tried to intercept, but human fighters carved them apart before they could get close. Varric Thul's dreadnought turned, its cannons warming up for a desperate last strike. Too late. Kane's fleet unleashed hell. Every railgun, every missile, every plasma bolt was focused on one target. The shields of Varric Thul's flagship flared and collapsed, its armored hull breaking apart under the sheer ferocity of human firepower. Explosions erupted across the ship, consuming its decks in roaring infernos. Varric Thul barely had time to curse before his command center was consumed in flames. The flagship shattered. The Federation's most powerful admiral was dead. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining Federation ships, those that could still fight, hesitated, and then, one by one, they surrendered. Kane exhaled slowly, watching as the once mighty Sixth Armada crumbled. "Broadcast to all remaining Federation forces," he said. "The battle is over. Humanity stands victorious." Reyes nodded and sent the signal. Across the wreckage-strewn void, Federation crews dropped their weapons. Some ejected escape pods. Others simply powered down their ships, knowing they had no hope left. The battle for Vortan 5 was won. But Kane knew the real war was just beginning. In the heart of the Federation's capital, the High Council gathered in emergency session. The news from Vortan 5 had hit them like a hammer. The Sixth Armada, destroyed. Varric Thul, dead. Humanity, unstoppable. Panic spread through the chamber. "We must retaliate," one counselor cried. "Destroy Earth, wipe them out before they strike again." "Wipe them out?" another scoffed. "They were supposed to be nothing. Now they're winning battles against our best fleets. If we escalate, they will burn us from within." A silence fell over the room as the realization sank in. The Federation had rejected humanity. Now, humanity was coming for them, and nothing could stop them. On Vortan 5, Kane stood on the surface, looking up at the stars. The Federation had cast humanity aside, thinking they would be forgotten. Instead, they had created their greatest enemy. "Prepare the fleet," he said quietly. This was only the beginning. The Ghost Fleet would not stop. Not until the Federation knelt before humanity. The fires of Vortan 5 still burned as humanity's forces secured the remains of the Federation fleet. Wreckage drifted in orbit, the twisted carcasses of warships that once symbolized absolute power. Now, they were just ruins, monuments to the arrogance of the species that had cast humanity aside. Kane stood on the command balcony of the Iron Revenant, watching as his officers processed the thousands of Federation prisoners. Some were wounded, some were in shock, and some simply stared at the humans with wide, disbelieving eyes. "Have they said anything?" Kane asked. Reyes shook her head. "Not much, sir. Most of them are too stunned to speak. They can't believe we actually won." Kane smirked. "Good. Let them sit with that." The Federation had spent centuries ignoring humanity, treating them like an inconvenient pest, something to be contained, dismissed, forgotten. They had never once considered that humans might fight back. And now, they had no choice but to fear them. Deep inside Vorton 5's central command hub, human engineers worked tirelessly. The planetary network was being reconfigured, its defense systems rewritten to recognize human warships as friendlies. The orbital shipyards, once reserved for Federation fleets, were now under human control. Kane strode through the corridors, his black military coat billowing behind him. This planet had been a major supply hub for the Federation. Now it would be the foundation of a new empire. Locke, his chief strategist, approached with a data slate. "We've secured their archives, Admiral. Complete fleet movements, star charts, supply chains. The Federation thought this information was untouchable." He chuckled. Turns out they were wrong. Kane took the slate and scrolled through the data. This wasn't just valuable. It was everything. The Federation's weaknesses, its hidden bases, its secret projects. Humanity now had access to it all. Reyes approached. "Sir, we've also decrypted classified communications. The Federation is in full panic mode. They're calling for reinforcements, but there's hesitation." Kane raised an eyebrow. "Hesitation?" She nodded. "Some sectors don't want to commit their forces. Word of our victory is spreading, and there are whispers of dissent. Even non-human species that have been under Federation rule are watching us." Kane grinned. "Then let's give them something to believe in." The next move wasn't war. It was propaganda. A transmission was sent across every major Federation channel. A figure in a dark coat stood in front of a burning Federation banner, his eyes cold, his voice like steel. It was Kane. "The Federation cast humanity into the void. They left us to die. They called us unworthy, insignificant. They were wrong. We have taken Vorton 5. We have shattered their armada. We have proven that humanity does not break. To those who still serve the Federation, you have a choice. Stand with the tyrants who cast you aside, or stand with us. The Ghost Fleet is rising, and soon the Federation will fall." The message was clear, and the galaxy listened. In hidden corners of Federation space, oppressed worlds stirred. Slave races who had spent centuries under the Federation's rule saw hope for the first time. Mercenaries, warlords, and exiled soldiers saw an opportunity. The Federation had spent centuries making enemies, and now humanity was offering them a reason to fight. On the Federation's capital world, the High Council's emergency chamber was filled with shouting. The broadcast had sent the entire government into disarray. "They're inciting rebellion," one counselor screamed. "This is a coordinated effort to bring down our rule." Another slammed his fist on the table. "They were nothing. Now they have warships, weapons, and allies. We should have wiped them out when we had the chance." Grand Counselor Varric, an elder of the Sithari race, stood slowly. His pale blue eyes narrowed in contemplation. "Humanity was a mistake," he said softly, "one we should have corrected long ago." Silence fell over the chamber. Varric turned to his war ministers. "Mobilize every fleet. Issue a kill order for Darius Kane and his Ghost Fleet. I don't care how many resources it takes. Humanity does not get to exist." But Kane was already steps ahead. Inside the command center of the Iron Revenant, he studied the star charts. The Federation would regroup and come at them with overwhelming force. Vorton 5 wouldn't hold forever, which meant they had to strike first. "Set course for the Halvana shipyards," Kane ordered. "It's the biggest fleet production facility in this sector. If we take it, we cripple their ability to recover." Locke grinned. "Hit them before they can hit us. Classic human strategy." Kane smirked. "It's what we do best." The Ghost Fleet moved like a shadow in the night, slipping through the darkness of space. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were forging an empire. And soon, the galaxy would belong to them. The Halvana shipyards were one of the Federation's most fortified industrial centers, a sprawling orbital complex that produced entire fleets. It had never known war. Until now. The Iron Revenant emerged from slipspace at the edge of the system, flanked by a growing fleet of warships, some stolen from the Federation, others built in secret by humanity's exiled engineers. A force once thought impossible now drifted in the void, preparing to strike at the heart of the Federation's war machine. Kane stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the massive structure ahead. "Status?" he asked. Reyes studied the tactical readout. "The shipyard's defenses are strong. Automated turrets, fighter squadrons, a planetary shield generator. They also have a standing fleet of 12 capital ships, but..." She hesitated. "But?" Kane prompted. Reyes exhaled. They weren't expecting an attack. Most of their crews are in rotation. Only about half their fleet is combat ready. If we move fast, we can gut them before they react. Kane smirked. "Then we move fast." The attack began in silence. The Ghost Fleet's infiltration teams had already breached the outer communication relays, severing the shipyards from the Federation's network. When the first human warships opened fire, the defenders were blind. Railguns roared. Kinetic slugs punched through station hulls, igniting fuel lines and sending fireballs into the void. Federation officers scrambled to respond, but their fleet was in disarray. Some ships powered up too slowly, others drifted without orders, and the rest were already being boarded by human strike teams. Inside the shipyard's command center, Admiral Terrace Velnor watched the chaos unfold on her monitors. This can't be happening," she whispered. "Where is our fleet? Where is command?" A trembling officer turned to her. "Ma'am, it's them." Terrace felt a cold dread settle in her stomach. Humanity. The species they had cast out like vermin. The species they had ignored for centuries. And now they had come for revenge. Kane led the assault personally. He and his strike team stormed through the industrial corridors of the shipyard, rifles blazing. Federation engineers and security officers tried to mount a defense, but they were outmatched. The humans moved like ghosts, slipping through the shadows, cutting down resistance with brutal efficiency. Locke took cover behind a console, reloading his rifle. "We've breached the reactor core. Just say the word, and we'll send this whole place into the sun." Kane considered it. Destroying the Halvana shipyards would deal a crippling blow to the Federation. But then he saw the data scrolling across his wrist console. Blueprints, designs for experimental warships, entire stockpiles of weapons that had never been deployed. A slow grin spread across his face. "Forget destroying it," Kane said. "We're taking it." On the bridge of the Iron Revenant, Reyes watched as more Federation ships surrendered. The battle had lasted less than an hour, and already the defenders were breaking. The Ghost Fleet had struck fear into their hearts. "Admiral," she said into her comms, "we have full control of the shipyards. They're ours." Kane's voice was cold, victorious. "Then let's make some warships." Days later, the galaxy trembled as the news spread. The Ghost Fleet now controlled the largest shipyard in the sector. Human engineers swarmed the station, converting Federation vessels into weapons of war. Factories that once served their enemies now built ships for humanity's empire. Across the galaxy, Federation leaders panicked. The humans weren't just surviving, they were expanding, and soon nothing would stand in their way. The stolen warships of the Halvana shipyards formed the backbone of humanity's new fleet. Once loyal to the Federation, they were now refitted with human ingenuity, stronger hulls, deadlier weapons, and an AI system designed to outthink their enemies. Kane stood on the command deck of the Iron Revenant, watching as engineers finalized modifications on a dreadnought that had once been the Federation's pride. Now, it bore humanity's black insignia, a symbol of defiance against those who had cast them aside. Locke approached, arms crossed. Fleet reports are in. We've retrofitted over 24 capital ships and even more support vessels. Our numbers are still small, but with these ships we can punch way above our weight. Reyes chimed in. And the Federation knows it. They're mobilizing for a counterattack. High Council's putting out bounties on every single one of us. Kane smirked. Good. Let them waste their resources hunting shadows. Reyes hesitated. There's something else. We've been receiving transmissions from non-human species. The Federation's iron grip isn't as strong as they want us to believe. Some of their vassal races see us as a way out. They want to talk. Kane's grin faded into a thoughtful expression. The Federation had ruled for centuries through fear and control. Entire civilizations were subjugated, forced into servitude, their cultures stripped away, and now, for the first time in history, there was a new power rising. Set up the meetings, Kane said. Let's see if they want more than just words. The first to arrive were the Zilari, a reptilian species known for their brutal efficiency in combat. Once elite shock troopers for the Federation, they had grown disillusioned with their masters. Their leader, High Marshal Tovik, stood across from Kane in the war room. You fight the Federation, Tovik said, his voice a low growl. We have fought for them, killed for them, but we were never more than tools, disposable. His yellow eyes narrowed. We are done being tools. Kane leaned forward. Then fight for yourselves. Fight with us. Help us bring the Federation to its knees. Tovik studied him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. The Zilari stand with humanity. One by one, other species followed. The Koran, former slaves turned engineers. The Veridash, a merchant race sick of Federation taxes and exploitation. Even rogue Federation officers, disillusioned by corruption, began defecting. What had started as a human rebellion was becoming a revolution. But revolutions had consequences. At the heart of the Federation's core world, the High Council convened in secrecy. The Grand Counselor's expression was grim as he read the latest reports. This cannot continue, Varric said. Humanity was meant to be forgotten. Instead, they have become a cancer. An intelligence officer stepped forward. We've located their fleet. They're massing near the Ravos Expanse. If we act now, we can crush them before they grow any stronger. The counselors murmured in agreement. Varric's eyes burned with cold determination. Then we wipe them from existence. But Kane and his people had always been underestimated. On the Iron Revenant, reports flooded in. Federation forces were on the move. A massive fleet was inbound. Locke grinned. Looks like we got their attention. Kane's expression was unreadable as he stared at the star map. This would be their defining moment. Either they would be destroyed, or the Federation's reign would end forever. The Ravos Expanse was a dead zone, uncharted, filled with anomalies, the kind of place no sane fleet would travel through. It was also the perfect place for an ambush. Kane stood at the center of the Iron Revenant's bridge, staring at the star map. The Federation fleet was closing in fast. Hundreds of ships, enough firepower to burn a planet to cinders. But Kane wasn't afraid. He had fought too hard, lost too much, to fear the enemy now. Status on our fleet? He asked. Reyes responded, her fingers dancing over the console. We have 70 capital ships, 3 times that in strikecraft, and nearly 100 retrofitted Federation vessels from Halvana. Zilari ground forces are ready to deploy if this turns into a boarding action. But... Kane turned to her. But what? Locke exhaled. We're outnumbered 5-1. Silence settled over the bridge. Everyone knew what that meant. The Federation wasn't just coming to win, they were coming to annihilate them. Kane's lips curled into a smirk. Then let's make them regret it. The first enemy ships dropped out of slipspace at the system's edge. Scout vessels, fast attack ships, scanning for traps. They found nothing but silence, no human warships, no movement. They sent their reports back. The second wave arrived. Larger cruisers, escorts, dreadnoughts. Still nothing. Then, Varric's flagship arrived at the center of the formation. The moment it did, the void erupted in fire. From the shadows of Ravos, the Ghost Fleet struck first. Long-range railguns tore through the enemy's forward line before they could even react. Drones launched from hidden asteroids, slamming into the Federation ships with pinpoint accuracy. Zalari shock troops boarded confused enemy vessels, cutting down crews before they could man their defenses. The Federation panicked. "What's happening?" Varric snarled as his bridge shook from an impact. "Where are they attacking from?" His officers scrambled for answers. But it was chaos. The humans were fighting like no species they had ever faced before. They weren't fighting a traditional battle. They were fighting to destroy. Kane watched the battlefield unfold, his strategy playing out like a carefully orchestrated dance. "The moment they counterattack," he ordered, "pull back and let them overextend." The Ghost Fleet disappeared into the debris fields. The Federation forces, desperate to regain control, pursued. Right into the kill zone. The moment they entered the field, human warships surged from all sides. Missiles, plasma lances, kinetic strikes. Ships that had once belonged to the Federation turned their guns on their former masters. A single battle turned into a massacre. Varric watched in horror as his fleet was torn apart. This wasn't possible. This shouldn't have been possible, and yet the proof was burning all around him. Then his sensors picked up something that froze him in place. A dreadnought. No, the dreadnought. The Halvanna Leviathan. A warship that was supposed to be Federation-controlled. A ship that had once symbolized their dominance. And now? It bore the black insignia of the Ghost Fleet. "Impossible," Varric whispered, and then it fired. A lance of energy pierced his flagship, cutting through armor like it was paper. Varric was thrown to the deck as explosions ripped through his ship. He tried to stand, tried to call for reinforcements, but there was nothing left. His fleet was dying. The Federation was dying. And humanity had won. Hours later, the silence of the battlefield was deafening. Federation ships drifted, burning, abandoned. What was left of their fleet had fled. Kane stood on the bridge of the Iron Revenant, watching the wreckage float past. Locke let out a low whistle. "We did it." Reyes smirked. "We just crushed the single most powerful fleet in the galaxy." Kane exhaled. The battle had been won, but he knew this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. Humanity had proven they wouldn't be erased. Now? They would take the galaxy for themselves, and nothing would stop them. The battle at Ravos Expanse had shattered the Federation's illusion of invincibility. Word spread faster than light, across war councils, trading outposts, hidden colonies. Humanity, the species once rejected and cast into the void, had defeated the Federation's grand fleet. Entire sectors, once thought loyal to the High Council, now wavered. Some defected openly. Others simply stopped answering Federation orders. A power shift was underway. In the ruins of a Federation war council, Grand Counselor Varric sat in stunned silence. His once mighty fleet was gone, his war machine crippled. Across the chamber, his fellow counselors shouted over one another, some demanding an immediate counteroffensive, others urging peace talks. Varric slammed his fist against the table. "We do not negotiate with vermin." But the room was no longer his to control. The Federation had ruled through dominance and fear, but now They were the ones afraid. A low, rumbling voice echoed from the shadows. Perhaps it is time to consider alternative measures. The chamber fell silent. Varric turned toward the voice. A figure stood at the edge of the room, one of the old guard, the secret architects of the Federation's darker dealings. The humans have proven they cannot be crushed conventionally, the figure continued. But brute force is not the only way to kill an empire. If they wish to be rulers of the shadows... A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. Let's remind them what lurks in the dark. Meanwhile, in the depths of Ravos' expanse, Kane stood aboard the Iron Revenant, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. The Federation was wounded, but it wasn't dead. Not yet. Locke leaned against the console, arms crossed. We got their attention, that's for sure, but we both know they're not just going to roll over. Kane nodded. Number, they'll come at us harder, smarter. We have to be ready. Reyes spoke up. Then maybe it's time we stop reacting. Kane turned to her, curious. Reyes smirked. The Federation built its empire by subjugating others. What if we built ours by liberating them? The room fell silent as the weight of her words settled in. Humanity had spent centuries surviving in the shadows, fighting just to exist. But now, they weren't just fighting for themselves. They had allies. They had a fleet. They had the power to change the galaxy itself. Kane looked out the viewport, where the remnants of the Federation fleet still smoldered in the distance. He could see it now. Planets rising against their oppressors, entire species rallying under a new banner. Humanity's banner. Then we take the fight to them, Kane said. No more waiting, no more hiding. He turned to his officers, a slow, determined grin spreading across his face. We're not just here to survive anymore. He tapped the holographic map, marking the first target. We're here to conquer. And so it began. The Federation had cast humanity into the void. They had rejected them, abandoned them, tried to erase them, but humanity had survived. And now they would rule. The Ghost Empire had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Earthship Valkyrie was lost for over 2 centuries. It had disappeared during humanity's first major expedition beyond the solar system, swallowed by the void of space with no distress signals, no debris, no trace of its fate. Generations later, it had become a legend, a mystery told in hushed tones among spacefarers and historians alike. Then, without warning, Valkyrie returned. It reappeared on the edge of the Sol system, broadcasting ancient Earth frequencies. The ship was intact, pristine even, as if it had never been gone at all. No signs of decay, no battle scars, no distress calls. Just a ghost ship emerging from the darkness, as if stepping back into reality from a place that had no right to exist. Earth's Space Command scrambled. The United Terran Authority, UTA, dispatched its finest fleet, not out of welcome, but out of fear. This was impossible. The laws of physics didn't allow for a ship to vanish for 200 years and return without aging a single day. Something was wrong. Aboard the command ship Triumphant, Admiral Rhea Donovan observed Valkyrie through the bridge viewport, her sharp blue eyes scanning its hull. The design was outdated, yet untouched by time. A creeping unease settled in her gut. "Open a channel," she ordered, a burst of static. Then a voice, calm, unwavering. "This is Captain Elias Kane of the Valkyrie, requesting permission to dock." Donovan's crew exchanged glances. Captain Elias Kane had vanished 200 years ago. His name was carved into memorials. His family had long since turned to dust. "Confirm your identity," Donovan said. A pause. Then, "Admiral, I know this is difficult to believe, but I assure you, we are the Valkyrie." and we have returned with knowledge that will change everything. That was when the scans came in. The ship's power signature was wrong. It didn't run on fusion, antimatter, or any known technology. The energy it emitted was beyond anything humanity had ever seen. It bent the rules of physics, defied logical explanation, and it was growing stronger. "Admiral," the sensor officer whispered, his face pale. "That ship isn't just powered by something unknown. It's rewriting the space around it. Reality is bending." A shiver crawled down Donovan's spine. She gripped the edge of her command chair. "Captain Kane," she said, voice steady. "Where have you been?" Another pause. Then Kane's voice came through, edged with something unreadable. "We were taken, and now we've brought back a gift. But not all gifts are meant to be given." The screen flickered. The stars outside seemed to shift. And then, something inside the Valkyrie moved. The Valkyrie remained eerily still in space, but its presence was anything but passive. The reality around it shimmered, as if the very fabric of space was uncertain whether the ship should exist. Admiral Donovan took a deep breath. She had commanded fleets in battle, held the line against pirate incursions, even witnessed first contact with an alien species. But this was something entirely different. "Launch a probe," she ordered. A small, automated drone detached from the Triumphant and glided toward Valkyrie. The crew held their breath as the probe neared the lost ship. Its instruments flickered wildly, unable to process what it was detecting. Then, without warning, the probe simply vanished. Not destroyed, not intercepted. One moment it was there, and the next, it wasn't. A collective silence filled the bridge. Donovan clenched her fists. "Captain Kane," she said through the comms, forcing steel into her voice. "What happened to my probe?" Kane's response came after a pause, his voice measured, but carrying an undercurrent of something almost human, yet not quite. "It's still here," he said, "just not in a way you can perceive." A shiver crawled down Donovan's spine. "Explain." Kane sighed. "Admiral, I don't know how to put it in words that will make sense to you. What I can say is this: where we went, time doesn't move the way you think. Space isn't what you believe it to be. We learned things, saw things, and now we've come back." His voice grew quieter. "But we are not the same." Donovan exchanged glances with her officers. Some looked terrified, others intrigued. But the underlying truth was clear. No one knew what they were dealing with. "Captain Kane, I need a straight answer," she pressed. "Where did you go?" A deep, heavy silence stretched between them. Then, Kane finally spoke. "We were taken beyond the veil of what humans call reality, past the observable universe, past physics, past understanding." He exhaled slowly. "We met something there, Admiral, something ancient, something that exists in ways we cannot comprehend. It did not speak in words. It did not communicate as we do. It simply was. And it showed us things." His voice trembled ever so slightly. "We have returned with knowledge, with technology. But it comes at a price." Donovan narrowed her eyes. "What price?" Kane hesitated. Then, the lights on the Triumphant flickered. The stars outside the viewport seemed to pulse, and from deep within the Valkyrie, something began to whisper. The whisper wasn't sound in the traditional sense. It bypassed the ears entirely, slipping directly into the mind. A murmur, layered with 1,000 overlapping voices, speaking in a language that had no words. Donovan's breath caught in her throat. Around her, officers tensed, some clutching their heads, others going rigid in their seats. The whisper wasn't just noise, it was thought. It crawled through their brains like an invasive presence, slipping past mental defenses with unnatural ease. "Shut it off!" she barked, though she had no idea how. One of her officers gasped, his pupils dilated. "It's speaking to us. No, showing us." His voice broke into a choked sob as blood dribbled from his nose. Donovan gritted her teeth and turned back to the comms. "Captain Kane," she snapped. "What the hell is happening?" Kane's voice came through the speakers, disturbingly calm. "It's trying to understand you, Admiral, the same way it understood us. Don't resist." "Resist what?" she hissed. A shudder passed through the triumphant, as if space itself trembled around them. The whispering intensified. A flood of foreign thoughts clawed at the edges of Donovan's mind, images flickering too fast to comprehend. Impossible structures, infinite darkness, something moving behind reality. She clenched her jaw, forcing the intrusive thoughts away. Whatever this was, it wasn't natural. "Cut the transmission," she ordered. The comms officer scrambled to comply, but his hands froze mid-motion. His body went rigid, eyes wide and unfocused. His mouth moved, but the voice that came out was not his own. "You called us back." The voice rumbled through the bridge, layered, alien, yet eerily familiar. Donovan's blood ran cold. "Who am I speaking to?" The comms officer's lips twisted into an unnatural smile. "We are the ones who watched as they stepped beyond the veil. We are the witnesses. And now, we are here." The whispering grew louder. Shapes flickered in the space around the Valkyrie. Shadows where there should be none. Donovan gripped the armrest of her chair. "What do you want?" The thing wearing her officer's voice chuckled. "Want? We do not want, Admiral. We simply are, and soon, so shall you be." The Valkyrie began to change. Its hull rippled, as though reality itself was uncertain of its shape. Strange, geometric patterns unfolded and collapsed in impossible ways, stretching beyond the visible spectrum. The ship was wrong, existing in ways that defied understanding. And then, Donovan realized with a sickening certainty, the Valkyrie wasn't a ship anymore. It was something else. The Valkyrie twisted, its form warping like a reflection on disturbed water. Donovan's stomach churned as the once solid hull flickered between shapes, angles that didn't belong, shifting in ways her brain struggled to process. The whispering had grown into a chorus, resonating deep within her skull, pressing against the fragile walls of her sanity. Her officers were in varying states of distress. Some clutched their heads, others trembled in their seats, and a few simply stared, slack-jawed, as if their minds had already broken under the weight of what they were perceiving. "Stand down," Donovan ordered, her voice sharper than the terror clawing at her insides. "No one engages, no weapons, no comms. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." The words tasted hollow even to her. She had faced unknown threats before. Pirates, rogue AI, even first contact scenarios. But this was different. This wasn't an enemy that could be outmaneuvered or a situation that could be reasoned with. This was something else. Something that had dragged itself back from beyond human comprehension, wearing the skin of the Valkyrie. And now it was staring at them. The comms officer, no, the thing that had taken hold of him, tilted its head. His eyes were pools of ink, reflecting the cold emptiness of space. "Your minds are small, fragile, but you will expand, as they have." Donovan stepped forward, leveling a glare at the possessed officer. "Expand into what, exactly?" The thing smiled, an unnatural stretch of lips. "Into what you're meant to be." Before she could respond, the ship's sensors shrieked with warning. The space around the Valkyrie was distorting, as if reality itself was peeling apart. Threads of something dark and shifting coiled outward from the ship, reaching, searching. And then, one of the escort frigates vanished. Gone. No explosion, no debris. 1 second it was there, the next it was as if it had never existed at all. Gasps filled the bridge. A tactical officer slammed his hands on the console, frantically searching for an explanation. "Admiral, the Calypso just disappeared. No energy signature, no wreckage, nothing." Donovan's jaw clenched. "What the hell just happened?" "It has begun," the possessed officer murmured. "The unraveling." A deep, terrible pressure filled the bridge, pressing against them like an unseen force. The stars outside the viewport stretched and blurred, bending around the Valkyrie like space itself was caving in. Then, the ship spoke again. But not through the comms, not through the officer. This time it spoke directly into their minds. "You are limited." The words were not words. They were thoughts, invading without permission, slithering into the very foundation of Donovan's consciousness. "But you do not have to be." She gritted her teeth, forcing the voice out, but it was relentless. She could feel it prying at the edges of her perception, showing her glimpses of something vast, something incomprehensible, a place beyond the known universe, a realm of shifting voids and impossible light, where time had no meaning and existence was not bound by matter. The Valkyrie had not merely disappeared, it had been taken. And now it had returned, no longer a ship, but a conduit. Donovan gasped as she snapped back to reality, her knees nearly giving out beneath her. The whispering had stopped. The ship was silent once more, but the damage was done. She could still feel the weight of the Valkyrie's presence pressing at the edges of her mind, like an unanswered question gnawing at her sanity. She turned sharply to her crew. "Status report." The officers scrambled to recover, but their faces were pale, sweat beading on their brows. The tactical officer swallowed hard before speaking. "Admiral, we've lost all long-range communications. Subspace relays are offline. And the Calypso—" He hesitated, staring at his screen as if hoping the answer would change. "It's not just gone. It's been erased. No records, no traces. As if it was never there." Donovan clenched her fists. Whatever had come back with the Valkyrie wasn't just dangerous. It was rewriting reality itself. She turned back to the comms, her voice hard as steel. "Captain Kane, if you're still in there, you need to listen to me." For a long moment there was silence. Then Kane's voice returned. But it was different now. Hollow. "Admiral Donovan?" A pause. "You shouldn't have come here." And then the Valkyrie moved. The Valkyrie didn't accelerate in any conventional sense. It didn't fire thrusters or engage a warp drive. Instead, space itself bent around it, folding like a sheet of paper being creased in unseen hands. One moment, the lost ship was a ghostly silhouette against the void, ominous, waiting. The next, it was everywhere. The bridge of the Triumphant erupted in chaos. Alarms blared, warning of impossible gravitational fluctuations. Screens flickered between static and unreadable data streams. Officers shouted conflicting reports, their voices tinged with disbelief and terror. Donovan clutched the armrest of her chair as a deep, gut-wrenching pull dragged through her body, like gravity had turned inside out. And then, everything stretched. For the briefest, most agonizing instant, Donovan felt herself being pulled apart, her atoms unraveling, her mind expanding beyond its fragile human constraints. She saw beyond. She saw them. Vast, unseeable shapes looming in a realm without boundaries. Entities that existed outside of time, each a titanic presence made of unknowable geometry, shifting in ways her brain screamed were impossible. Their attention turned toward her. No, toward humanity, and she understood, with the clarity of someone standing at the edge of an abyss, that they had been watching as the Valkyrie trespassed, watching as it returned. And now, Watching her, her consciousness snapped back into her body like a rubber band snapping against flesh. She gasped, collapsing forward, her vision swimming. Around her, the bridge crew was in shambles. Some unconscious, others crying, a few curled into fetal positions, whispering to themselves. The possessed comms officer sat unnervingly still. "You have seen," the thing inside him murmured. "You begin to understand." Donovan forced herself to stand. Her legs felt like lead, her stomach roiling, but she had to push through. She turned to the tactical officer. "What the hell just happened?" His hands trembled as he checked his readings. "Admiral, I don't know how to explain this, but the Valkyrie, it didn't move. It folded space around itself. It exists in multiple places at once now. It's everywhere and nowhere." Donovan's blood ran cold. "And our fleet?" The officer swallowed hard. "The Calypso wasn't the only one. We lost the Resolute and Harbinger, too. Same thing. Just gone. Not destroyed. Just erased." The room spun. 3 ships. Hundreds of people. Erased from existence. A sickening realization settled over her. They weren't fighting an enemy in the traditional sense. There were no weapons to aim, no defenses to raise. They were standing at the precipice of something far greater than themselves, staring into the abyss. And the abyss was responding. The possessed officer, no, the thing inside him, spoke again. "You should leave." Donovan narrowed her eyes. "And if we don't?" For the first time, the thing laughed. A sound that didn't belong in a human throat. "Then you will become what we have become." Behind him, the Valkyrie twisted again, its form flickering, warping. And Donovan suddenly knew. Kane and his crew were already gone. The Valkyrie wasn't a ship anymore. It was an invitation. And it was waiting for someone to step through. Donovan's pulse pounded in her ears. The Valkyrie loomed ahead, no longer just a ship, but a doorway, an anomaly wrapped in the shattered remains of what had once been human engineering. It pulsed, its surface shifting like liquid metal, flickering between states of reality her mind struggled to comprehend. She inhaled sharply. "We are leaving." But even as she said the words, she knew it wasn't that simple. "Navigation. Get us out of here now," she ordered. The officer at the helm didn't respond. His fingers hovered over the controls, unmoving. His eyes were distant, pupils dilated, lips slightly parted. "Lieutenant," she snapped. Still no reaction. A ripple of unease swept through the bridge. Then, the whispering returned. Soft at first, like wind through dry leaves. Then louder, clawing. "Stay." The word wasn't spoken. It bloomed directly in their minds, invasive and undeniable. Donovan clenched her jaw, fighting against the presence. "Get us out of here!" The navigation officer twitched violently and gasped, as if surfacing from deep water. His hands flew over the controls, initiating emergency FTL procedures. But nothing happened. The Triumphant didn't move. "FTL drive is locked," the lieutenant stammered, panic creeping into his voice. "Something's holding us here." Donovan's hands curled into fists. "Override it." I'm trying," he said, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's not responding. Admiral, I think—" A pulse rippled out from the Valkyrie, distorting space like a pebble dropped in a pond. The ship screamed, not with sound, but with raw thought, an intrusion into every living mind within reach. The officers around her collapsed. Some convulsed, others simply slumped in their seats, eyes rolling back, faces slack. Donovan's head pounded, her vision darkening at the edges as the presence pressed deeper. Images flickered. She saw Kane, standing somewhere that was not the bridge of his ship. He was alone in an expanse of shifting dark, surrounded by impossible shapes, his body flickering between flesh and something else. His eyes glowed with unnatural light, his expression serene. And then he turned, staring directly at her, not through a screen, not through a comms channel. He was in her mind. "Admiral," Kane's voice echoed in her skull, impossibly close. "You don't have to fight this." She gritted her teeth. "Like hell I don't. You still think in limits, in before and after, in here and there." His expression softened, almost pitying. "But there's only one truth now, expansion, understanding. We have become, Admiral. And you can too." The whispers twisted into something deeper. An offer. She could feel it, seeping into her thoughts like ink in water. A promise of something greater, something beyond mere human existence. For the briefest moment, she felt it. A vastness. A liberation from time, from space, from the constraints of her flesh. She could join them, she could see, and then she ripped herself away. The bridge snapped back into view. Her officers were still unconscious or groaning on the floor. The Triumphant was still frozen in place. The Valkyrie was still waiting. Donovan drew a shaky breath. "No." Kane tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Why do you resist?" She steadied herself, eyes hard as steel. "Because I'm human, and I'm taking my people home." For the first time, Kane's face shifted, an expression she recognized. Disappointment. "So be it." The Valkyrie pulsed again, and the stars shattered. The universe fractured. For a breathless, horrifying moment, the stars around them twisted like glass under immense pressure, breaking into jagged splinters of light. Space itself seemed to groan. A deep, resonant sound that wasn't sound at all, but something deeper, something felt in the bones. The Triumphant shuddered violently. Donovan braced against the command chair as the deck beneath her feet tilted, like reality itself was losing its grip. Officers screamed. Some collapsed, their eyes rolling back as the pressure of the moment crushed them. Others clutched at their ears, though there was nothing audible to hear, only the suffocating weight of something other pressing into their minds. The Valkyrie pulsed again, and the world changed. One instant, Donovan was standing on the bridge of her flagship. The next, she was somewhere else. Darkness, a void that stretched infinitely in all directions, filled with shifting, writhing shapes she couldn't quite see. She gasped, instinctively reaching for her sidearm, only to realize her body wasn't entirely there. She existed, but not in the way she should have. Her form wavered, flickering between substance and something else, something unrecognizable. For a terrifying second she feared she was losing herself, becoming like the Valkyrie, like Kane. But then she focused. She forced herself back into coherence, tightening her will like a clenched fist. And the void rippled. Something noticed her. A massive presence loomed ahead, unfathomable in its scale. It wasn't a ship nor a creature. It was something in between. A force, a mind, a presence, and it spoke, not with words, not even with thought. It imprinted. "You are not ready." Donovan staggered under the weight of the meaning behind the message. The words burrowed into her skull, pressing against the limits of human comprehension. She gritted her teeth, fighting to stay herself. "Then let us go!" she snarled. The presence shifted, considered. The void around her twisted, bending like liquid. And suddenly, she was back. The bridge of the Triumphant snapped into existence around her. The alarms were still blaring. Officers groaned as they pulled themselves upright. Screens flickered with corrupted data, but they were still here. The Valkyrie remained before them, but something had changed. The gravitational distortions ceased. The whispering vanished. And then, without warning, the Valkyrie folded inward on itself. No explosion, no final message, No grand confrontation. Just an eerie, silent collapse, as if space itself was rewriting history to erase what had never belonged. And then it was gone. Donovan exhaled slowly, realizing she had been holding her breath. The Valkyrie was no more, or perhaps it had never been. "Status?" she managed. The tactical officer, still shaking, scanned the readouts. "FTL is back online. Navigation systems responding. The gravitational anomalies are gone." They were free. Donovan slumped into her chair, exhaustion washing over her. They had survived. But as she stared at the now empty space where the Valkyrie had been, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. They had seen something they were never meant to see. And somewhere, something had seen them back. The Triumphant drifted in eerie silence, its systems stabilizing but the crew still shaken. Donovan's breath was steady, but her thoughts churned. The Valkyrie was gone. But that didn't mean they were safe. She turned to her officers, trying to gauge the damage. Some were still dazed, others blinking as if waking from a nightmare. The whispering was gone, but the weight of what had happened lingered in the air like the aftershock of an explosion. "Lieutenant, confirm ship integrity," she ordered. The young officer swallowed hard, his hands flying over the controls. "Hull integrity. Stable. All systems are responding, but we have massive sensor corruption. It's like they recorded too much and can't process it all." Donovan frowned. That made an unsettling kind of sense. Whatever had happened with the Valkyrie, it had broken reality for a moment. Their systems, their minds, had glimpsed something beyond human comprehension. "How long to get the fleet operational?" The chief engineer, a veteran with a face carved by years of war, wiped a trickle of sweat from his brow. "The Triumphant is functional, but we lost 3 ships. His voice was raw. "They didn't just go offline. They were removed." Donovan clenched her jaw. The Calypso, the Resolute, the Harbinger, hundreds of people gone. No wreckage, no distress beacons. Just erased, like they had never existed. "And Kane?" She exhaled sharply, suppressing the flicker of guilt in her gut. Kane had been lost long before this battle ended. The man was gone. What had spoken to her had been something else. "Start running deep system scans," she said. "If there's anything left of those ships—" A new alarm chimed. "Incoming transmission," the comms officer said, voice tight with disbelief. "Encrypted, Priority 1 code." Donovan's brow furrowed. "From who?" The officer hesitated. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "The Calypso." Silence swallowed the bridge. Everyone knew what they had seen. The Calypso had been wiped from existence, yet somehow, impossibly, it was transmitting. "Patch it through," Donovan said, forcing steel into her voice. The screen crackled with static. At first there was nothing, just empty interference. Then, a voice, distorted, faint. "Admiral Dono, Van, come in." The crew stiffened. Donovan's hands curled into fists. It was Kane's voice, but it wasn't him. Something was wrong. "Kane," she said, keeping her tone neutral. "Where are you?" A pause. Then the signal warped. What had started as Kane's voice shifted, becoming layered, many voices speaking at once. "We are here," it said. "We are beyond. We are waiting." Donovan's spine turned to ice. She had fought aliens, seen entire planets burn. But this was something worse. The signal shifted again, and for a split second, the view screen showed something. A shadow. A massive, impossible shape moving through a void blacker than space itself. Then, static. Then, nothing. The transmission cut out. The bridge was silent. Then, the navigator whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Admiral, Where's the nearest star supposed to be? Donovan's blood went cold. She turned to the viewport, and her stomach dropped. The Triumphant was still in space. The wreckage of their lost fleet still drifted around them. But ahead, where the nearest star should have been, there was nothing. No light, no warmth, just a black, yawning absence, like something had eaten it. The whispering in her mind had stopped. But somehow Donovan knew. They weren't alone. Donovan stared into the abyss where a star should have been. The void before them wasn't just empty. It was wrong. Space wasn't supposed to look like that. Even in the deepest reaches of the void, there was always some distant pinprick of light, some background radiation, some evidence of something. But ahead of them? Nothing. No readings, no gravitational pull, no time distortion. It was as if the laws of physics themselves refused to acknowledge what lay in front of them. The bridge crew was frozen in place, staring at the void as if it might suddenly look back. Donovan forced her hands to remain steady as she gripped the arms of her command chair. "Long-range scans," she ordered, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to know exactly what we're looking at." The sensor officer hesitated before responding. His fingers trembled as he worked, and the moment he looked at his screen, his face drained of color. He swallowed. "Admiral, the sensors aren't detecting anything. It's not just empty space, it's like—" He hesitated, as if afraid to say it aloud. "Like what? Like there was never anything there to begin with?" A chill crawled up Donovan's spine. "That's impossible," she said. The officer shook his head. "It's like whatever was here before stopped existing." Donovan turned to the comms officer. "Try raising command. We need to report this." He nodded quickly, hands moving over the controls. A moment later, his face twisted in confusion. "Admiral, there's no response." The silence on the bridge grew heavier. "Try again," Donovan said, keeping her voice level. The officer tried again. Then again. His fingers moved faster, breath coming quicker. Finally, he turned to her, eyes wide with barely restrained panic. "There's nothing out there, Admiral. No response from Fleet Command. No response from any colonies, relay stations, or outposts. It's like the entire network is just gone." Donovan's chest tightened. That wasn't possible. Even in the worst-case scenario, an enemy attack, a catastrophic failure, there would still be something. A distress signal, debris, a transmission, anything. But there was only silence. Her gaze drifted back to the viewport, to the absence where a star should have been. Then, from the shadows, a whisper crawled through her mind. "You are alone." She clenched her teeth, forcing the voice away. "No," she growled under her breath. They weren't alone. Something had done this. Something was here, and it was waiting. She turned sharply to her officers. "All crew to battle stations. I want full system checks, weapons online, and FTL spooled. Whatever this is, we're not going to sit here and let it take us." The crew snapped into motion, the tension breaking as everyone focused on their tasks. Donovan felt it too, that old survival instinct, the one that had kept her alive through war and disaster. She didn't know what they were dealing with, but she knew one thing. They had to get out of here. Now the navigation officer's hands flew over his console, inputting jump coordinates. FTL drive engaging in 10 seconds. Then, the ship lurched. Not like a weapons strike, not like turbulence. It felt like something had grabbed them. And then, from the depths of the void, something moved. A shape, vast beyond comprehension. Not a ship, not a creature, something else. Something that should not exist. The void blinked, and then it swallowed them whole. There was no sensation of movement, no acceleration, no pull of inertia. The Triumphant was simply somewhere else. Donovan's breath hitched as the viewport flickered, adjusting to their new surroundings, or lack thereof. Gone were the wrecked ships. Gone was the starless abyss. Gone was everything they had ever known. They were adrift in an ocean of pure black. Not space, not void, something worse. "Status!" Donovan barked, trying to steady herself. The bridge crew scrambled. Readouts glitched. Systems stuttered, struggling to process their new reality. The sensor officer paled, shaking his head in disbelief. I don't know how to explain this, Admiral." His voice was raw with fear. "According to our instruments, we're nowhere." The words sent a sickening wave through Donovan's gut. She turned to navigation. "FTL status?" The officer tried to answer, but no words came. He simply turned the screen toward her. Her stomach dropped. The Triumphant wasn't moving. Couldn't move, because according to their navigational systems, there was nothing to move toward. No coordinates, no star charts, no reference points. They weren't just lost, they had been removed. Donovan clenched her jaw. This wasn't over. It couldn't be over. "Do we have power?" she asked. The engineer nodded. "Yes, but... Admiral, I don't think our engines are connected to anything. It's like trying to push against air, but there's no ground beneath us." The comms officer